Okay, so I am here today with the wonderful and kind and gracious Miss Celia Thomas. And she is the COO for at Alternatives for Girls. And we've actually been talking for about 20 minutes before the camera has started. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to continue our conversation because it's kind of an organic interview. I don't really want to say this is an actual interview. So I'm really excited about the direction that our conversation is going. And so we're just going to continue. So Miss Celia, thank you
for
welcome. Helping me.
You're welcome. It's good to be talking to you.
And I am going to try to, I think I'm just going to hold this like this so we're not trying to
You're going to hold it.
I
Why
am
don't you just
going to
position it. There's that coconut bottle. I mean, if you want that
okay, so we're going to try to prop this up.
Be on there? Can we just talk and it's just voices?
Yeah, we can. We don't really have to.
Now turn it back. Tilt it towards you too.
Okay. So up until now, we were kind of talking about what I've been able to do and with the programming that we want to continue to create. So Miss Celia and I, we were about to get into a really good conversation about that. And I was like, wait, we need to start recording. Mm-hmm.
So let me say this, because this is where I was going. I'm of the firm belief that people are positioned where they're positioned for reasons, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned that a lot of what you were doing just actually came naturally and it just kind of flowed organically. And then something happened where someone was leaving mm-hmm. and, for you had a moment of panic, but then people kind of reminded you that this should be pretty natural. Yeah. The transition should be good. The transition will be something that other people will see in you right. and out of you externally. Right. And I believe that. One of the things that I really try to do when people are ready to leave a job, for example, I typically don't beg them to stay. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, you're ready to go? Go. Mm-hmm. But what I rely on when people are at that place and before they even get to that place, I rely on them having the foresight to recognize what's below them, what other staff are around them, mm-hmm. and having the foresight to continue to develop staff even as you're in your job. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I mm-hmm. really support in our programming is the concept of cross-training.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. I don't like when only one person knows something and nobody else knows, right?
So as well.
So mm-hmm. I'm big on let's cross-train. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that I have to know 100% of what mm-hmm. you know, mm-hmm. but I need to know a good amount of it, 25, 50%, mm-hmm. because of two reasons. Number one reason is if I drop dead today, who's going to come and be like, okay, I know where she keeps this. Right. I know how her file system works. Right. I know what she's doing in her day-to-day work. Right. And I know what she was thinking about doing in her future work.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And you want people to know that because that's part of how you keep the legacies going.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
To have someone in your space that is just tucked in this little corner is counterproductive. Mm-hmm. It's actually on many levels, I think, cruel, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Because you're holding somebody down when mm-hmm. you have them in a little mm-hmm. corner and you're like, well, you just stay in the office and tell me what you're doing and I'll let the other people know. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in that. I believe as soon as people figure out somebody is in the office thinking, innovating, being creative. As soon as we recognize that, I feel like we have an obligation to be like, okay, come with me or you go. Okay. You go out. Right?
So if you had an unlimited budget, how would you use that in this space?
Oh gosh. So if I had unlimited budget, there'd be a couple of focuses that I'd want to have. The focus on what we call the direct service, which means the work on the ground. Mm-hmm. So the focus on developing staff so that they can be effective with participants, right? That's huge, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. If all our staff are super ambitious and only into themselves, that's not going to help the participant, right? So as we're developing staff who are ambitious to be what they want to be, there has to be a component that develops them to treat the customer right. right? Treat the participant right so that the participant gets what he or she needs to get, and then so that she, the participant, can develop as well. So the one focus is on what I call, and in this world we call it the direct service.
Okay.
Right? So focus on the staff so that the staff can be empowered to focus on the participants. The other focus has to be on the stuff that happens peripherally, and here we call it indirect services, right? Indirect services include things that pay my salary, for example. Because the truth is, we're all just step ladders with each other. And, you know, in every single organization, you have to have people on the ground. And then you have to have the people who support the people on the ground, or the people who track the movement of what's happening on the ground and push it out into the community. So the whole, I believe that the whole system is a series of step ladder movements. And you can't just have the people on the ground doing everything. You have to have the supports for that, which include things like your visionary leaders, your CEOs, your COOs, your directors. You have to have your support team, your clerical team, your finance team, all those pieces. They support the people on the ground and they lift the whole organization. So 2 components, direct service, indirect service. If I had unending money, obviously I would feel a deep obligation to put money into both of those areas. It can't be just one or the other. I feel like you absolutely have to look at this from the wider scope and recognize the value of each one, right? I had a director one time, she says, why don't we just crunch down, and instead of having a CEO, a COO, a CFO, and then in the agency I was in, we had some vice presidents as well. She says, instead of doing all of that, just crunch it down and just do the CEO and the COO, get rid of the middle level and just have the director and the staff. And I said, well, if you can help me to understand how the work gets done, because the truth of the matter is this work is hard, right? And it's hard on the ground, it's hard in the middle, it's hard at the top. Trust me, it's hard at the top. And part of what we all struggle with is we do more work than we should do. Each of us individually, right? Right? You know, we really do. And so the idea that there is unending funding would definitely help us to even things out so that case managers on the ground can carry a realistic caseload. Right? You know, here at AFG we do okay. When you look at the state, those case managers have 150 clients. Right. How are they supposed to meet the needs of 150 clients? How are they supposed to meet them effectively? And timely, right?
How do they even know them?
They don't even, they can't know them, right? They can't even know them, and effective case management means you know all your people. Right? That's how you serve people on the ground. So having unending funding would allow an organization to really temper out the work so that people are better able to focus and be more effective. Right? And that would go for the stuff that happens directly with our client to staff interactions, but then it would also go for the stuff that happens indirectly. In my position, if I'm not having to substitute for a director in X way or Y way because we have enough directors. If we have enough directors, I don't have to pick up some of the director work and do it. I can focus on my work. Right? And here, my work really involves a lot more of the strategic thinking and planning and developing and going out for marketing and fundraising and things like that. But to the extent that I have to turn around and pick up Sandra's work, to help her with whatever, or Carolyn's work or Tanisha's work, then my ability to do what I should be doing is diminished. Right? So I say unending funding means tempering out the dollars so that direct services can be stronger and indirect services can be better supported. That's what I would do with unending funding.
Now, if you had the ear of the president, what would you tell him what would be some policies that you think need to be put in place for us to be able to better serve our participants?
You know, it's funny because I don't care too much for this one, right?
We're gonna pretend.
Right, let's just pretend. although I'll say this. I don't care too much for this one, but this one does have somewhat of a business focus and a business mind. I mean, I don't know, because this one has filed bankruptcy several times and whatever, right? But at least his spin is business oriented. And I, over the last couple of years, as I've done my work, interfacing at the levels that I can interface, you know, above me with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, or the Housing and Urban Development Department, the federal levels, it is very clear that this president is interested in business and what do things like human services and what does public health, what do those things mean to business or to the economy as a whole, right? He's not a touchy-feely president, right? He's very much into whatever he's into. But to the extent that we can help him and that administration understand the connects, I think we can do well if we can help them understand the connections, right? One of the ways that I know we can pull his coattail involve helping them to understand this concept that we call return on investment, helping him to understand, if you put money here in health and human services, this is how it will impact you positively over time, right? So, and I actually, I see a lot of potential in helping him to understand return on investment. So what that means for us on the ground is we've got to generate outcomes that show them how putting money here can positively impact the economy. And so what does that mean? This is part of why, you know, one of the first things I did when I got here was we wrote a grant to U.S. Department of Health and Human Services asking for research funding. Okay. When I got here, we were doing some leadership development with youth. And as I was looking at it, we're thinking, the people who were here, they said, well, this is giving us good results, and this is keeping girls out of trouble, and this is teaching girls how to be leaders, and we think that this has good potential for helping girls to achieve at higher and higher levels. So as we looked around, there were a couple grants coming out that had you doing research to prove that the work you're doing on the ground is highly effective. So we wrote the grant. We pulled together a couple of evaluators, you know, the high-level statisticians and them people. And hang on 1 minute. And
the role of a COO, people.
We wrote the grant and we scored the grant. We won the grant. We were one of, I think it's 14 agencies across the country that scored this funding. As we went to the first meetings with the feds, we were told that there were 78 proposals done. So we were one of 14 out of 78 nonprofit agencies and universities that asked for federal funding to do this work. So the point, though, was we recognize that we have something good here, and we've got to figure out how to help other people hear about it. Hear about it, number one, but also how to demonstrate that it can be highly effective and is worth ongoing funding and will help people come out from where they are, you know. So like I said, we were dealing with teen girls and trying to help them with leadership development. And every girl that we save, means that there's a girl that can be more productive in the economy. Right? It means that we decrease the chances she will have an early unplanned pregnancy. We decrease the chances she will get involved in substance abuse.
And it changes generations.
Yes. It breaks generational cycles, and it's a catapult for progress. So I think that if we can continue to show federal government how putting money down here positively impacts the economy, it can yield some good for nonprofits. So that's kind of where I figure we need to pull his coattail and help him understand how those pieces all play out together. Yeah, I think that would be it. And I know actually part of the evidence that we have that this could work is one of the things that he did as he was coming on board as president. He assigned this gentleman, his name is William Wobbenhurst. He assigned him to the federal Department of Health and Human Services body that works with families and youth, the FISB, Families and Youth Service Bureau. FISB is the acronym that we call it. He assigned this gentleman Wobbenhurst to FISB. And I think that happened in 2017, right? And Wobbenhurst's resume profile talks about his work in the healthcare field on return on investment. Right? So this was part of where...
This is interesting.
Yeah, where we thought, okay, this is how we're going to reach this president, is to be able to participate in activities that lend themselves to assessment of return on investment. Right? So here at AFG, we did score that grant. That's that Girls with Ambition project. Right? And it's a 5-year grant. So over the course of 5 years, the federal government has given us almost $1 million a year to participate in research. Right? And if we can get enough positive results, it will speak to how this work on the ground can positively impact the economy. Right? Now, we are one of 14 agencies doing this work, and so all of our work together here at AFG, we are trying to serve at least 600 girls. Right? And so if you think about the other organizations across the country, I don't know what their numbers look like, but potentially we're probably looking at a capacity to serve 2,000 to 10,000 girls, people. It's not just girls. Some of the projects are boys as well. And of course, we're doing our project on leadership development. They're doing their project on some component around leadership development or around pregnancy prevention, because pregnancy prevention is also a focus. To the extent that we can divert early unplanned pregnancy, we're going to improve these girls' lifestyle and trajectory. Right?
Which, when you're talking about return on investment, that actually takes people off the Medicaid roll.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. So if I could talk to the president, that would be the pathway I would use. That's where I'm walking. When I'm talking to Wobbenhurst, I'm talking about this is what we're doing at AFG. And this is why we're doing it. We're trying to break cycles of generational poverty. We're trying to move people off aid, blah, blah, blah. Another example over in your department would be what's going on with workforce development. Right? Now, the interesting thing, I know I'm pretty excited too. The interesting thing with that is what we thought was going to be a delay and a hiccup and, oh my God, when will we start, is actually an opportunity because had we gotten the money and have to start immediately, there would be less time to plan things out, right? Your coworker, Sarah over there, she came on board as AmeriCorps Vista. And her work was not to do direct service. Her work was to help us with the brainstorming and help us with the planning, right? as you're doing your different projects, you got to have a planning phase
Right.
and then an implementation phase. Sometimes your planning phase can be really small. It doesn't have to be like with our Girls with Ambition grad. We had 9 months of planning.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And that was nice because we could really just think and plot and
Okay.
right. But it can be smaller. It can be a few months, or a lot of what we do in our day-to-day lives is we're planning in our mind.
Right.
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 And then, even though you don't think about it, the fact that you're planning in your mind and you're just thinking, well, one day I just went out and volunteered at Peggy's place and then I volunteered so much they hired me.
Right.
But believe me,
Right.
you were planning in your brain, right? You talked about the essay that you wrote. You were planning, right? That essay would be an example of planning phase before implementation phase. So with the workforce development funding and things that we're doing right now, it's planning. And planning usually yields better results than just trying to jump in there and start swimming, right? So even though we initially thought that we would be doing that work starting in October of this year, or actually we were supposed to start that work back in February of this year. But the funder has delayed, right? The funder has delayed starting the work. So we thought we would start in February. They said, no, it'll probably be September or October. So then we thought, okay, well, perfect, because we're going to have Sarah, who's an administrative employee. She'll be on board in July, August time. So September is okay. But then September came, September left, October came, October left, still no start. But it's giving us an opportunity to really plot this out so that when we start, now I hear we're starting in January. And I've asked your director to confirm that when we start, we'll have some planning behind us, which should help us. And again, the end point is showing them how when they invest their money on the ground with an organization like AFG, this is how it gets used. It gets used in planning, then it gets used in implementation, then we see positive outcomes, people get off welfare. You have a productive adult contributing to society instead of draining.
And a taxpayer.
And a taxpayer. Exactly. That whole contributing to society thing, right? You have someone who's not just drawing from society. Exactly. Yeah, so that would be where I'd pull his ear.
Okay. Well, we are going to apologize, people. I'm getting a phone call while we're talking. I have taken up enough of Miss Celia's time. I am so very thankful to you.
You're welcome.
And this is going to help me get an A, right?
Absolutely, you should get an A.
Thank you, everyone. I look forward to the feedback. Bye-bye.